Hey everybody, composer Brian Ralston here. I wanted to run you through one of the great features of Digital Performer, my DAW software of choice, on all the work that needs to go into setting up a cue and setting up a reel to compose for film or television. There's a lot of great videos out there on composing and going through a cue from beginning to end, but there's also a lot of prep work that has to go into finding tempos and your meters and putting in markers from spotting sessions that you don't get to see a lot. So I thought I would take the time to show that process. Okay, so here we are, and here is a file in Digital Performer. This is from an older film of mine a few years ago called Graduation. I'm just going to use reel 5 as an example. I would do every reel kind of in the same fashion, of course. In this particular example, reel 5 didn't really have a lot of cues, so since being at the end of the film. First thing we want to do is open a movie window. Actually, before we get to that, let me just say that the consolidated windows sets in Digital Performer are great because you can create how you want this to look. I like working across 3 different monitors. I have a monitor usually over to the left side here, and then I have another monitor up above where I throw my actual movie video. But when I'm doing putting in the spotting note markers and breaking down what the cues are, I don't really need everything spread out, and it's a little quicker, I've found, if I just have everything in a consolidated window with just what I need. And I create a window set for that here, save window set, and I call it my spotting session set. And now we'll open everything up to what you see here. So now if I go to the window where I have my movie set to be, and I right click on that, and I'm going to set my movie. So I go in here and I'm going to pick reel 5. We're going to open that. So now there's reel 5. The problem is there's 2 different time codes that you have to tell Digital Performer when you import a movie. You have to tell it what the movie start time of this QuickTime movie is, but then you also have to set what the chunked start time is. And this movie start time is exactly how it should be, reel 5, so hour 5. 0 minutes, seconds, and hours, and I click OK. But the chunk time is defaulting, of course, to something else, because right now I'm getting measure 7,000. It's very far down the timeline. So I need to go in here in sequences and set my chunk start time, and as you can see, right now the chunk start time is, even though this is reel 5 according to this movie, it thinks it's reel 1 here. So I'm going to change this to reel 5. And now my beginning of my time and my chunk, my timeline here is correct with the movie over here. So second thing you need to do, you have movie audio in QuickTime. There are a couple ways you can do this in Digital Performer. Great thing that they've added in DP8 is you can actually click audio output and you can route that movie to any bus or output that you have in your system. This can be good, so if you want to simply add an auxiliary track, like here, label that bus 3-4, and that is the same output that is listening to here. And if you want to play this through, as soon as we get to a 2-pop here, we'll hear it. And you know you're hearing that through the auxiliary channel. But there's a reason, in my opinion, why you wouldn't want to do that. And the biggest reason is I like to actually see the waveform that I'm looking at from the movie audio. This audio is delivered properly on this QuickTime. So left channel is dialogue and production sound. Right channel is temporary score. And I want to be able to independently control those. And I want to see the wave file in case I need to cut something. Having that visual indicator of the wave file is very helpful to do that. So I'm going to actually get rid of this auxiliary track. And instead, I'm going to right-click and import movie audio. And what that's going to do is it's going to take just a quick second here, and it's going to take the audio track from this QuickTime movie that's embedded within the QuickTime movie, and it's going to add it to the timeline. And there we go. Let's make this bigger. So now I can visually see, there's my 2-pop. You can see I make these wave files a little more substantial. you could see that 2-pop in there. And then we can see the dialogue. And this can come in really handy if we want to put in markers or things from our spotting sessions and we want to, after the character says a particular line, you can actually really visually have an indicator when those things are.
Wait.
Okay? So, the other thing that you want to do, in my opinion, is I want to be able to independently control left channel and right channel. Right now, if I'm listening to this on my stereo speakers, I've got left channel dialogue coming out, and I've got right channel temporary score. Being able to see where the temp score starts is probably a good indicator for spotting notes of where things are, but I don't want to hear it coming out of the right channel. I actually want to be able to turn it completely off. So a great way to do that is go into Motu and just simply add their trim. Just down here. And the trim plugin will let me pan left and right independently of each other and also increase or decrease the gain independently. So if I pan both of these to the center, because I'm just using them for reference, I don't really care if they're actually correct in where they sit in the sound field. So and these are linked because that unlinks them, right? So I want them linked, so I'm panning them in the center. But on the gain, I'm going to unlink them. And so what I will do is I will turn down the right channel, which is turning down this temporary score channel, and leave the dialogue channel up. That way, when I listen to dialogue...
Give me 10 more minutes.
No, you've had half an hour.
Yeah, well, I just can't pull a helicopter out of my ass.
Okay, get her out.
We better hurry.
Okay. So now I'm not hearing this temp score. And if I wanted to reference the temp score ever, I could go back in here and I could actually turn it up and hear what it is. Or turn it all the way down. Okay? Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to add our markers based off of the spotting note meeting that we had with the director and the producer. So I'm going to go in here and my notes first tell me that our first cue is actually going to start at the 8-second mark. So I go there, Control M, add a marker. I'm going to call the marker 5M1, and I'm going to specify that it's the in point. Sometimes I like to also mark the out point. Sometimes I like to decide that later. But this is just a really quick way to go through where we determined in that meeting where cues were going to start and stop. So the next one is at 5-1-31-10 and add a marker. And this is 5M2 in. And then I'm just going to continue on through these. So the next one is at 3. Oops. 3:27. 5M3. Add a marker. Call it 5M3 in point. And this one, okay, yeah. So keep going. 5M4 is 5:55:19. Add a marker. 5M4 in. Okay, 5M5. And you get the point. Now this one I actually have an out point that we had specified. So I'm going to want to include that as well. So let's just go here to the in point and add the marker for 5M5. And the out point is at 5:8:59:3. So again, I will just call this the 5M5 out. Okay. And let's do one more. but you get the idea. And 08, this is what my spotting notes tell me is 5M6. I'm going to add a marker. Click 5M6 in. And I also have an out point specifically for that cue. So at 4913, and then I'm just going to continue these through the rest of the reel. Now, even if it's a song cue, I like to put it in just so that I have reference of where that song is going to go. So if you have a spotting session and it's not where a score cue goes, but where a song or source cue goes, I also like to put that in, and we'll call that. So let's jump forward now to this reel being done. Okay, so now I've gone here and I've added all these markers for basically where cues go in and out, and I have the entire reel covered. So if I were to scroll through all this, you see that I have here markers throughout the entire reel of where cues belong or go. I haven't really added the details per cue yet, and I'm going to do that later. But the next thing you want to do is you want to lock all of these markers, and you're locking them to the time code, because if you start changing around meters and measures and tempos, you don't want things to shift around on you. So by locking that, you're locking it to that exact part in the movie. Okay, so here's where the magic happens, in my opinion. A long time ago, I was using a file, and this probably rarely happens now, but one way you can use chunk files. Now, chunks are basically, think of them like layers. So, or if you want to think of your digital performer file like an album, and the chunk are the tracks on the album. One way that you can score film, and it is a very fast and efficient way in digital performer, is you can use the chunks so that you have one file for the whole movie or the whole reel, and you use the chunks for every cue. So you would create a new sequence, duplicate your track layout, or duplicate the chunk, and you could have real, 1M1, 1M2, 1M3 in this drop-down menu here, and everything is nice. Well, sometimes in the past, I've had friends and me as well where that file has gotten corrupted for various reasons. It can be a corrupted sound file within it that is corrupted, and the whole thing just doesn't open. And the best way to guard against that, in my opinion, is every cue is its own digital performer file. And if you want to do a version 1 or version 2 or version 3 as a new chunk, maybe that might be of use to you. But I really think every cue needs to be in its own file. So how do you do that? Well, we have the entire reel out here, and we have all of these cues labeled here at their different start points. And so what we can do is I'm going to turn on this I'm going to turn on this locking tool. So I want to snap to marker. Okay. So everything I do, even if I cut with the scissor, and I'm going to highlight these two reels, and I'm going to cut these with the scissor, they will cut right on that marker. See that? And the same thing with if I'm going to cut right there. If I go to 5M3 and I'm going to cut 5M4, I'm going to cut as well. And you're going to see in a second why I'm going to do this. And I'm just going to go down the line, and I'm going to cut. Here's 5M7. This is actually a source cue. And then 5M8 in point was determined to be there. And then 5M9's in point. Now here's two markers that are actually really close to each other. One is the out of the source cue, out of the score cue before it. And then one is the in of the song cue. So I want to make sure that I cut on the right line there. And then we have an end credit suite that's going to go somewhere around there. Okay. So what I want to do now is I want to create or peel off all of these cues into their own digital performer file. And the quickest way to do that, and it's going to take me a lot longer to do it now that I explain it to you than I can get into a flow and do it. But basically, you're going to want, the easiest way is to chop off the audio before where you're going to cut. Put your marker here so that you know, or you can actually click there and it'll go right to there. Okay, so now look at the time code. We have 5000800, right? So I'm going to save a new file. So save as, and I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to save this. Save it in a new folder. Let's just say cues. Okay. So I'm going to call this as 5M1. And if I'm going to, I like to duplicate audio every time I save it out. So, but it'll make its own project file. But you can also create another folder for it. It says 5M1 if you want to get really specific. But 5M1, duplicate audio, save as. Okay. So now I've saved everything. It's copying that data over. And it's going to take it a minute to do that because I actually have more audio in this file. Okay. So I'm going to go back up here, and now that I've saved this out as new file, C5M1, I'm going to change my chunk time. Now, I don't want to change this movie time. I want to change what my chunk time is. So I'm going to say that my chunk time is now starting measure 1, 0 minutes in real time on the cue is going to be at 50008 and 00 frames, right? Preserve current time, yes. Delete if before start of chunk, yes. Okay. So I'm going to click OK. And now what that's done is that has taken that exact point and made that the start of the cue. So I'm going to take these. This is the audio that goes to that cue from the dialogue track. And Shift L or Command L will shift that. I want to shift it to a specific place or marker. So just say I want to shift it to measure 1, 1. Okay. And now we should have this cue exactly in sync with the dialogue.
How did this happen?
We have measure 1 starting at real time of 0. And I'm going to rename this as 5M1. This is my chunk name. And there we go. So now we have our own cue. There's 5M1. So how do I get 5M2? Well, it's simple. I just go to 5M2. Let's save that. Go to 5M2. I'm going to change the chunk start time again. Let's go back up to the time code here instead of real time frames. So I set the chunk start time, and now it's 5/1/31/11. So 5/1/31/11. Click OK. One of the more lock markers cannot be preserved. Okay, that's fine. What it means is I have something before what I'm setting to start. Is it okay to delete it? Yes. Okay. So delete that. Get rid of this audio here. Because now everything in that cue has shifted now. So this second cue is now measure 1. So I'm going to save as a new name. Okay. So I'm going to go here, create a folder if you want, 5M2. Great. Okay. Call that 5M2. Duplicate audio is probably a good idea. I'm not going to do it, so I save time. So click there. We have the audio in here. I'm going to shift it, Command L, to a timer marker, measure 1, 1. And for that cue now, we have measure 1 a real time of 0, 0, right? And we have the dialogue in sync. And we just go continue on. So now this is 5M2. I can change the name of this so they all match. It's 5M2. Save. Great. Moving on. 5M3. And we just go down the line. And do the same thing. So project, sequence, set chunk start time. And now this start time is the exact same thing that's up here. So 3:27:01 is going to be my measure 1 of the cue. Click OK. Yes, it's going to delete the 5M2 marker. That's what that means. Then I go there. Great. So that's the beginning of that cue. So I can go back to this audio. Command L, shift to timer marker, yes. Now that should be in sync. And it looks like it is.
We're going in.
Remember, I'm not hearing the music because I've turned down the 1/2 of it. If I were to turn that up, I would hear the temp. So I'm just hearing the dialogue. Okay, so we're going to call this 5M3, so the chunks time, it all looks the same. We haven't saved it out yet, so I better do that. So save as. Let's go back here. Let's create a new folder. 5M3, create, change this to 5M3 at the top. Save as. Now we have a 5M3 in its own thing. Okay. And you just keep going down. 5M4, same thing. So, and you can kind of do these in whatever order as long as you get them all exactly right. So by the end of the time when you save it. So same number here is the one that goes here. So this is 05, 55, 21. Yes, it's fine. It's going to delete stuff before. Let's just go back to here and shift them to the front while I'm here. I'm going to rename that to 5M4. And now it's time to save it out as 5M4. So I'm going to create a new folder, 5M4. Make sure you call the file actually 5M4. So here we go. There's Q5M4, and everything looks and plays in sync. Okay? And you're just going to continue to do this, and you're going to go down and do 5M5, 5M6, 5M7 exactly the same way. And then by the end of the time, when you're done, you should have a folder. If I go in here back to my graduation folder where all my cues are, you should have a folder that would have all of the cues that you had and the different versions of them in their own Digital Performer files. That way, if you needed to actually like copy this cue away to somebody or send it via WeTransfer or something, you can actually send all the audio and everything to that one cue. You're not sharing an audio file of every cue in that reel. You just got audio files for that one cue in that folder. It makes it really great when collaborating. So continue through that, and then we will now get to the step of actually determining tempo and markers within each cue.